Hey, it's Daniel from Theology is for Everyone with more insights in Matthew. Matthew chapter 26, it picks up at the end of 24-25, which was on Wednesday of Passion Week, probably Wednesday evening. In chapter 24, Jesus and the apostles were leaving the temple grounds, which he did every evening. He sort of spent the night outside of the jurisdictions of the Jerusalem religious leaders, so they couldn't get to him. And so they were going out, and chapter 26 starts with when Jesus had finished saying all these things. That's the Olivet Discourse in chapters 24 and 25. So now he's getting ready to prepare his disciples for these the events of these next couple of days, which we know of as the Passion Week events. What some people call Maundy Thursday, which is what chapter 26 is about. The betrayal and the arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane, then Good Friday, and then the Sabbath, which was a high Sabbath, on Saturday, and then, of course, Resurrection Sunday or Easter. So that's what these last couple of chapters of Matthew cover. So in chapter 26 here, he's preparing his disciples, his apostles for this. Starting in verse 6, we find the story of Jesus' anointing. Now, the Gospel of John puts this before Passion Week. Matthew just records it here as he doesn't say when it happened, just that it happened. So I don't think there's a contradiction there. He just says that it took place, which of course it did. It's just that he puts it here, whereas John says that it actually took place before the triumphal entry. There was a plan by Judas Iscariot. I think probably what happened was this, and of course we weren't there, but I think probably what happened was all of the times that Jesus had now been telling them, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, this is going to happen in Jerusalem, I think had finally disillusioned Judas. He was looking for the Messiah who would overthrow Rome. He was looking for the political leader, not the suffering servant from Isaiah 53. And so all of this talk, when they finally are coming to Jerusalem and Jesus is telling them this is coming soon, Judas, I think, was more interested in just exposing Jesus as a charlatan than he was having him killed. I don't think that Judas really wanted to have him killed. In fact, when he found out about that's what the religious leaders were going to do, he regretted his decision of even turning Jesus over to them. I'm not saying that what he did was right, of course not. But it gives us a perspective into what Judas was looking for. He thought Jesus was just another one of the fake messiahs that had been coming and going. And he probably felt embarrassed and ashamed that he had been caught up with this guy, this Jesus of Nazareth. He hadn't followed any of the other guys, but for some reason he started to follow this guy, and it turned out that he had been fooled, at least in his mind. And so that's the backdrop between Judas finally making this plan. I've got to let everybody know that this guy is a fake, that this guy is a charlatan. And I think, and of course this is my opinion, and you can disagree with me, that's okay. In fact, contact me or leave a note in the comments if you disagree. That's fine, we can discuss it. But I think that was why he finally said, I've got to turn this guy in. I need to let the religious leaders know what's really going on here. Because he knew that they were ticked off at him, at Jesus. And so he began to, verse 16 says, from that time on, Judas began to look for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Of course, then we find the story of the Passover, the Last Supper. Jesus uses the Passover to springboard what the death on the cross, what his death would accomplish. And he said, it's in his blood that the new covenant would be ratified, would be taken care of. Every covenant in ancient civilizations, it seems, was ratified or was instituted by some kind of blood sacrifice. You can go all the way back to Genesis 15 when God made his covenant with Abraham, and he had Abraham cut animals in half in order to have this blood and have this symbolism. In fact, in Hebrew, they don't say that they are making a covenant. The Hebrew word says that the verb says that they are cutting a covenant. That was very integral in the system. And so Jesus here said, I am about ready to make the new covenant, or get ready to ratify or institute the new covenant. This is the new covenant in my blood. And of course, the new covenant, when his disciples heard that, they immediately thought of the prophet Jeremiah. In chapter 31 of Jeremiah, we read that once God puts Israel back into her own land, which is still future, it's the kingdom, the millennium, the millennial kingdom, the messianic kingdom that Jesus had been offering this whole time. Once God puts Israel back in her land, then he will make a new covenant with them. Jesus' point was that this covenant still needed to be cut, and it still needed blood to institute it and to ratify it. And it was through this offering, this sacrifice that he was going to make, that the new covenant would be able to be made with Israel and the nation of Israel in the coming kingdom. It is at that same time that Peter says, well, everybody else can leave, but I'll never leave you. And of course, Jesus said, well, you will deny me. No, I won't. Yes, you will. And of course, we find out that Peter did indeed deny him. Jesus, now this is so cool. Jesus knew where Judas would betray him. Jesus knew that Judas knew all of his spots, right? His locations, his patterns. And instead of running and instead of hiding, Jesus and his disciples, they left the upper room and they went exactly where Judas knew that they would go. Jesus wasn't trying to get out of this. He wasn't trying to hide. He went to the garden in Gethsemane, and there he prayed, and there he waited to be arrested. He literally gave himself over to his betrayer. And I think that's just a great reminder to us. Whether you're watching this around Easter time, at the time of this recording, we're only about a month away from Easter. And at this time, it's a great reminder that Jesus went into this willingly. He went into this very carefully. He knew exactly what he was doing. And not only did he give up his own life, like we'll see in chapter 27, but he handed himself over. He said, "Here I am. Here I am." Well, the rest of the chapter does recount Peter's denials of Jesus, and it starts the process of the trials after the arrest. Jesus went through 6 trials, and some of them were actually illegal according to Jewish law, but Jesus was going to go through 6 trials in chapters 26 and 27 here, before he was finally executed for the crime of treason. And we'll see that in chapter 27.